Why should we identify risk in our project? Most times, when we are embarking on planning our project, most times people don't actually pay more attention in the risk identification. That's why at the end of the day, they keep on complaining that they usually have, if they have known, they should have done this and should have done that, they should have done this. But without understanding that the risk identification is one of the critical areas in planning your project. If you fail to identify risks in a project, just know in mind that you are likely to compromise or not meeting up the expectations of the project, or ending up spending unnecessarily that was not expected to do in the project, and you lose your reputation, you lose your capacity, you lose trust, and so many other things that you can lose, and you lose client. A lot of disadvantages that will definitely affect your company and also affect your project. But risk identification is always very critical. If you are very conversant in how you manage a project, you have to understand that risk identification will be the critical areas of a project. You always required as one of the first things that are required to be done. When we talk about risk identification, people don't even know that even the stakeholders can be a risk in your project. Well, it's not just focus on the job that they are doing. The stakeholders that fail not to identify on time is actually a risk on your project. Because towards the certain stage of your project, you are likely going to have a resistance, and somebody say, no, I'm not aware of this, I'm not aware of that. At the end of the day, a time that you are spending to be able to clarify for certain things, you are actually wasting a lot of time, which you are impacting on the delivery of your project. Why am I saying this? You always be very, very key factors are very, very important. They identify risk at every stage of your project, but during your planning is something that requires a very tight distance for you to identify risk on your project. Even when the project has been initiated, you can start immediately to identify risks that are likely to impact on your project. But risk identification does not end during the initiation or planning of a project. You can also, it's a continuous process that you keep on tracking. What is going to likely to impact my project? What are those things that are going to likely to impact on my project? So as far as you are working on your project, you keep on identifying the risk and know the risk owner. The identify of the risk while you are working is actually identifying the risk owner of that project and see how you can be able to solve that problem as soon as possible. If you fail to identify a risk during your project, it becomes an issue. And the issue, most of the time, is not predictable. You don't know the kind of issue that you cannot be able to know what to do at that moment. And it becomes an issue. Remember, it will impact the cost of your project once that issue arrives. It will impact the schedule of your project. Most times it affects the quality of your job, which is very wrong not to encounter such. So it has so many connections on your project. It impact the team morale while they are working. Why was this thing not being captured? They feel being neglected. They feel that they don't understand what they are doing. So that's why it always be very important on your project that you should identify risks during the planning of a project. So now question should be, how can you be able to identify risks? See, as a project leader, it's not just depends. Project is not just depends on you. It depends on your team for you to be able to solve a problem in terms of identification of risk in your project. You need to bring your team when you are decomposing your scope of your project. You need to bring your team around, let them feel, or let them know what the objective, what you want, what you embarking, why you are embarking on this project. Let them know the objective. Let them know the key areas, deliveries of this project. Let them understand the importance of achieving these goals. What are the benefits of achieving these goals? Let them see the project as their own. Once you can be able to, it helps them to keep on decomposing the requirement, because in the process of decomposing the requirement of the project, that's when they start identifying the risk associated with each task that you are about to do, and you highlight all those risks on your project, highlight all those things that are likely to impact on your project, and analyze them and see how you can be able to solve them if they occur on your project. You keep on monitoring them continuously on your project, not just identifying what is affecting the scope of the project. Even your team can be a risk on the project. Somebody can fall sick on the project. Somebody can have an injury on the project, which is definitely likely to affect your team. What do you do if such happen on your project? So all these things are analysis. Some vendor can disappoint you on your project. They may not meet up on time during delivery on your project. So what would you do at that time? What is your plan? What's your alternative that you need to exploit at that time? And sometimes somebody, the contract that you're handling may change. Another person may take over. It's possible. It has happened, especially in a government project. So it's very, very common. So how can you be able to translate to another people to see how you'll be reporting to the person, so let you know where we are and what we are about to do and your mission. So it will help you to know what you need to do next. There is numerous stuff that you can use to identify a risk on your project. But for you to do this, you have to work with the right team. Very, very important. You have to be continuously engage stakeholders to understand their requirements, because not understanding their requirement is a risk on the project. Because if such occur, it becomes an issue. An issue is another dimension stuff that is very, 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 very dynamic and require a lot of stuff to be done. So identification of risks on your project is always be very, very important. Engage your team, let them understand what is required to be done, and also decompose those high deliverables into smaller tasks and activities, which will help you to know the risks associated with those tasks or activities required to carry it out to achieve some certain levels of delivery of your project. So team always be very, very important. They should be engaged while identifying the risks on your project, to also know what it will cost you. Because if you don't know the cost of that risk, it's actually a problem. Because once you lost out of over budget your project, or you are behind, or you schedule, all these things are cost. It has a cost impact, definitely. If you don't know about it, it has a very good cost impact. So you must put these things into consideration in order for you to be able to solve your project and meet up to the deadline required and deliver the value that is expected on that project. Very, very important.